Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. It's November 2nd, 2024, 3 days until the US general elections. And 2 days ago, I put up a video sharing my thoughts about the US left, how it has stagnated, some of the obstacles that it's facing, and how it might possibly get itself out of the ditch that it's in, and has been in for a very long time. Some of this is it's being kept in that ditch from the outside, and some of it is internal. In any event, in the video I discussed topics like Bernie Sanders' 2016 and 2020 runs, the Occupy response 3 years after the global financial crisis, the growth of DSA and similar organizations around the same time in the 20-teens, and what the left should do now rather than standing around and not doing anything or supporting Democrats. Because those are the two things that people seem to do the most frequently, is either do absolutely nothing, which is not going to yield any results, or try to work within the Democratic Party, which is going to be futile, wasted effort, get you nowhere. In response to this, as somebody who myself has been involved either indirectly or directly with the Green Party since the early 2000s, and has seen how that party, which has a number of actually pretty good values and ideas which most of the left would support, has suffered from a lack of people actually getting involved in the party and building it into something that has a real presence on the national landscape. And so nothing changes in part because the US left has no organized vehicle for representing itself. So it seems to me that the obvious move is, instead of just typing internet comments, go find your local Green Party and help turn it into something which might be able to do something more than just complaining. Seems simple enough. But then again, we're talking about US society, which in my view may actually be expressing a collective death wish. This isn't a theory that I've gotten into in detail on the channel, but it is something that I have seriously considered from time to time. In other words, there is actually widespread mass knowledge about a lot of the problems that we're facing, including existential problems like climate change, but we can't seem to get past square one. A lot of that is the result of structural, systematic repression, like in the electoral system, which, to be honest, I'm commenting on because it's something that's on a lot of people's minds right now, because the elections are next week, so, a decent time to have this discussion. But as a communist, I know that there is no parliamentary road to socialism, and again, I'm just sort of using this as an opportunity to have this broader discussion, which again, talking to a US American audience, this seems to be a discussion that can only be had every 2 or 4 years, because people just tune it out most of the rest of the time, and they go back to just fighting amongst themselves. Anyway, yeah, the US electoral system is a joke, even as bourgeois capitalist democracies go. There isn't ranked choice voting, there isn't proportional representation, and the quote Democratic Party frequently engages in lawsuits and other legal means to try to kick Greens off the ballot year after year in state after state. So even down to the state and local level, the elections oftentimes are completely gamed, and it's an extreme struggle to get anybody but a Republican or Democrat or an independent who's been endorsed by big money and oftentimes used to be a Democrat or Republican and basically thinks like them and has that same corporate agenda, elected and into office. So you really need much, much, much more popular weight behind anything that's going to be successful. You need tens of millions of people involved and pushing at every level really to get anything done. And so that's sort of the broader vision that I was trying to speak to. I personally think that the Bernie Sanders moment in 2016 was a once or twice in a century type of moment where the US could have actually developed a Labor Party because people were actually listening to Bernie Sanders and would have followed him into the Green Party. And then you would have had maybe 10 million members there, and that would have been the start of something. Now, even that, you would have had to struggle for militancy, discipline, and just not letting the platform get watered down, particularly as political power tends to grow out of economic power or the struggle for control of industry. And although the labor movement is starting to make some gains in the last few years, it's overall at basically a century-long low in terms of its membership and overall success. So it's a really terrible situation. We're imminently facing the possibility of widespread ecological disruption and possible biosphere collapse. That is catastrophic, apocalyptic, really. When I go back to the collective death wish, we're facing basically apocalyptic scenarios here and basically struggling to get engagement out of a lot of people. Just the psychology shuts down. The human mind is somewhat fragile to be sturdy enough to even deal with a lot of these issues consciously without crumpling into denial or any of the other crutches that people fall back on. But, instead just to look it in the eye and go, we got to do something, seems extraordinarily rare. So as far as what I'm doing here on this channel, I'm trying to bring a much higher level of theoretical and historical literacy to the movement, which I was just talking about the various manifestations of in that recap, because it can't hurt. I don't really know what's going to help at this point, because it seems like you can't get people to do even the most obvious things that are right in front of them. It just seems like a lot of people have given up. Now, I know that that's not really the core listenership of this channel, and it's not me. But when we talk about mass movements requiring millions of people, I mean, it's got to be millions of people at some point. And actually, when I started this channel in 2020, there was the initial phase of the pandemic, and also the Black Lives Matter stuff was going on. It was a pretty big year in terms of upheavals. But then the lid was put back on, and we haven't seen anything like that since. People haven't really fought the return to business as usual with the pandemic. Joe Biden got in, did vax and relax in May 2021, which shocked public health authorities, but nobody did anything. The medical establishment, everybody involved in health sciences in any way rolled over for that. And so the mask mandates went out the window, and COVID started really spreading. The unemployment benefits were tapered off, and there just wasn't really a fight about basically any of this. And I think that that's pretty typical, actually. People are not putting up a fight about most of the things that require a fight to be put up. Or they're trying to wage that fight through the Democratic Party, which, I hate to break it to you, is funded by and works for the people trying to put a lid on all these struggles. So again, the Green Party's been there since the 80s, and it's just not being built. Why is that? Is it because the US is just hopelessly a labor aristocracy that cannot possibly think in internationalist terms? I don't think so. I think that there is enormous pressure for them not to, but I think that you can get people to understand why having an internationalist perspective is important. It's the actually getting people to struggle, fight, put something on the line, risk something for it, because people are fucking terrified of the government and the police state. That's really, I think, probably the single biggest overriding factor. Yes, people are trying to content themselves with the consolation prize of whatever consumer electronics they're getting, but really, people know that their lives are lacking in meaning and they're feeling alienated, and really people are pretty desperate for a solution to that. But when you explain what's involved in actually fixing that, people start to back off and get really scared. So again, we've been doing this channel with communist content, trying to see, what effect this will have by actually educating people in the history of the international communist movement. And, how that gets translated into action here is anybody's guess, including mine. I don't know what's going to come of this. I am putting the information out there, making it more accessible, doing basically like study guides through the comments to try to reinforce some of the ideas and make them more digestible, and seeing what happens, hoping that somebody takes all this and figures out, some way to actually make an effective movement that fights back in all the right ways. One can hope, and life is full of surprises. I don't know. But coming back around to this thing of, at least build the Green Party, it seems to me like that's the most obvious thing that, if people haven't done that by now, they're probably not going to do it. But also, if they're not going to do that, I don't know what they will do. But I am somebody who's going to try to be contributing to this movement for the entire rest of my life. And of course, I'm going to keep having thoughts about what might possibly work. And of course, I'm going to keep sharing those as I have them and trying to communicate them in a way that people might understand. Running this YouTube channel, you know who you are, but I don't know who you are. Unless you've been commenting a lot, unless we've been DMing, unless you come to the streams and frequently contribute, I don't really know who's listening. Of course, most of this channel is aimed at a communist or at least communist curious audience, like the advanced masses interested in learning more about communism, possibly for the same main reason that I am, which is to take the existing US left and to inject into or help it to reach a higher level of theoretical and historical knowledge so that it might be more effective in the things that it's trying to do and which have to be done. So anyway, about the Green Party thing, yeah, it seems to me like the obvious undone step, but let's talk Green Party criticisms for a minute. One in particular is, well, just generally their vice presidential nominee this year, Butch Ware. This guy fucking sucks. I don't know why they picked him. He doesn't even know why they picked him. Actually, there's a speech from like a week ago that he posted where he's speaking outdoors. I forget the title. And basically he said nothing would have surprised me more than to tell me that the Green Party was, considering him as the vice presidential nominee. He said when he got that call, he was like shocked. And you know what, I am too, because he sucks. So first of all, he's completely unready for national politics, as evidenced by the fact that the first time he got pushback on Twitter, he turned the fucking comments off. Now he still interacts through Instagram, but you literally cannot ask him a question or offer advice or criticism through Twitter, except by quote tweeting him. And I've complained about that a lot. I don't think anybody listens to me, but I was complaining about that quite a bit last week and tagging the main Green Party US account and also the Team Jill Stein account, which manages their overall presidential run. You cannot let your vice presidential candidate just turn Twitter comments off literally the first time he gets pushback. So, I mean, is he going to be that unresponsive and unaccountable if elected to office? It just raises so many questions. You're trying to appeal to the left in the US, and you can't handle any criticism like that? You're running for vice president. Now, the good news is he's not going to be elected. The bad news is what the fuck were they thinking? Although, again, I will chalk this up to it being more fringe, and I addressed that in the video that I posted 2 days ago, is, yeah, you're going to have weird fringe things going on in a party that doesn't have mass numbers to even it out and bring it in line with what more of the US left thinks. But again, I think that this is partly just the state of things right now. Everybody's kind of just doing their own thing. Anyway, the specific issue that he got pushback on was he mentioned the Uyghur thing in China in the same breath as Palestine, as like basically being equivalent. And he got a lot of pushback on that. Whatever you think about that topic, you have to know that you can't just post a comment like that on Twitter, let alone when you're running for high office in US politics, not expect pushback, and then be so fragile that you turn comments off after that happens. Utterly unserious thing to do, and it cost them a lot of credibility. Butch Ware at this point is giving J.D. Vance a run for his money in terms of dragging down the ticket as the vice presidential nominee. Okay, so that was piss poor, and as far as I've seen, the Green Party is letting that ride. They have corrected it to say that his account is no longer attended, and if you want to actually interact with him, you have to go to Instagram. But are you running a campaign here to win, or what are you doing? Because that is not supportable. Okay, and then since I posted that video, this guy has come out with other stuff. Since I did that video, he did this Q&A where he's stammering through the entire thing. He looks like he has no idea what he's talking about. Again, they picked about the most unprepared person for this run at a really critical time. The US left needs more mass representation. I stand by that statement, but this guy is definitely not the guy, not even close. I don't know who really thought that he was. But anyway, in the Q&A, in addition to looking like he's about to shit himself in most of the clips that I saw, he made both transphobic and anti-abortion comments. What the fuck? Who vetted this guy? At least I have to assume that that's a mistake because that is not in line with Green Party values, and I can only hope that it wasn't part of a concerted strategy to put somebody more reactionary on the ticket to try to appeal to more like libertarians, the Russell Brand set, kind of more like conservative reactionary New Agers, which, you find a broad spectrum of things in the Green Party. You find actual hard left people, you get hippie capitalists, and you get some weird contrarians. The point to me is like right now, even if a few more thousand actually committed socialists join the party, it would swing the party definitely in a very positive direction. And we could get more things like the Howie Hawkins campaign, but more popular. Because understand that there is a struggle within the kind of more eco-socialist left wing of the Green Party and the more populist right wing of the Green Party. I think that Jill Stein is more from the right wing, although some of her talking points that kind of bugged me in the past, she has toned down on, so credit where due. But if you recall in 2020, there was an effort from the populist wing of the party to get Jesse Ventura to run, who didn't want to run, because they were opposed to more of an actual left-winger, Howie Hawkins, running on an eco-socialist ticket. And even Howie Hawkins, who was a co-founder of the party back in the day, has some like green anarchist ideas, and you're going to find some of that in the party. Actually, point 9 of the 10 key values is decentralization, which I would say is the only point which isn't compatible with more of a Marxist outlook. But anyway, I think that Jill Stein has improved her messaging somewhat. They definitely have been nailing it on Gaza, but the problem is it's actually fairly easy to get Israel-Palestine right, as evidenced by people like Jackson Hinkle. The problem is, what's the rest of your politics like? And it's not necessarily good. So let's go ahead and play these clips from Butch Ware, which are absolutely unacceptable. There needs to be accountability for this within the upper levels of the Green Party, which I am not in, but there needs to be a struggle for that because honestly, unless you want the party to just succumb to being the meme that the Democrats try to make you into, well, this is a turning point as far as I'm concerned, which is what I would have to say about the video that I posted the other day. That's basically looking back over the last 25 years and going, the US left has had an option in front of it, which was actually pretty good, whether it was Ralph Nader in 2000, David Cobb in 2004, etc. You had an option which was pretty good. The US really does not have even a social democratic party doing kind of the basic calls for expansion of the social safety net, resisting austerity, things like that. And, I think that the Green Party exceeds that level of party. But anyway, you had this option here. People really weren't building it. And now what's it becoming? It's really concerning. And I do think that there is a turning point here. And that's part of publishing the video and going, look, this has been here for the last 25 years. It hasn't been built. And what are we going to do now? Well, here are the Butch Ware clips.
Do you believe there should be any limits on abortion?
Then of course there should be limits on everything. There's almost nothing that should be left, completely unregulated. But I think that a lot of the kind of common sense, regulations that most Americans agree on as essentially 60-40 issues. Something like 16 weeks and other such. I won't go into kind of the fine points on it, but of course there have to be limitations. There have to be regulations of abortion without any question.
Do you agree with the idea of biological males playing in female sports?
Biological males playing in female sports?
Yes.
I don't think that biological males should play in female sports. I think that it gives an unfair, competitive advantage, and I think that the politicization of of transgender rights is frankly right-wing talking points that Black folk have been kind of indoctrinated with over the course of time. I don't think that this is a major social issue. I don't think that our freedom, I don't think that our liberation, I don't think that our escape from under the yoke of white supremacy is predicated on this question in any way. And I think that one of the things that is most emancipating about the Green Party agenda is that it has not participated in the culture war between liberal extremists and conservative extremists. The basic premise of the Green Party is that when you're 18 years old, you should live your life according to the code that you choose.
So abysmal answers. The best of any of those responses would at most get about a C-. The bulk of it, though, and overall ranged from about an F to a 0. Right up to the end where he endorsed libertarianism, basically. He was just like, at the end of the day, our party's about doing whatever you want. No, I think you should go join the Libertarian Party because that's their motto. Anyway, I was actually done with this video and I was just editing in the visuals when I learned that shortly after 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, Ware did release a statement trying to cover his ass and not let the whole party get dragged down with his absolute failure on these softball questions. So this particular part I'm editing in after this whole video was recorded, but here's what Butch Ware had to say. Quote, I am neither a pro-life abortion banner nor a transphobe. Well, let's just say that those comments that he made were behind the times to say the least. Even a stock Democrat can give you better answers on both those questions. They may not mean it, and they may not do anything about it with the power that they get when they're elected time after time after time, but in terms of playing the politics, they would bury this guy. The left should be leading the discussion anyway, and the 16-week comments on abortion, that would be a huge step backwards. And then the trans comments are like 10 years out of date at least. What it shows is a refusal to stand up for human rights, instead relegating it to, that's a minor question and we don't really care and blah, blah, blah. At the very best, it shows a lack of understanding of how that topic is related to many other topics, which is again the role of the left to be leading and teaching if we're ever going to get out of this mess. But instead, this sort of ducking of the whole thing of like, oh, that's the culture war. No, that's a really chicken shit ducking of huge areas of struggle. Maybe the Kyle Kalinskis of the world will applaud you for that. But actually, in trying to be more mainstream by adopting that line, they're actually taking this really niche position that actually only terminally online populists really will relate to. Anyway, continuing, it saddens me to have to announce this, poor you, because I have never, in public or in private, taken a position against a woman's right to choose or against the rights of the LGBTQ and trans communities to live the lives they choose. So again, this guy is just not it. This was not a good pick for the top of the ticket for the Greens. Continuing, yesterday I was made aware of the hurt caused by the proliferation of 2 short clips of my recent comments on a political interview program. These comments were taken out of context. Describe how they were taken out of context, because they don't seem like it to me, and used to paint me as holding views which I fundamentally reject. I don't know, dude, you said a lot of words in there that I think that you meant. Continuing, let me be clear, the values I stand for and the principles I uphold are rooted in full inclusion, respect, and justice for all communities, especially our LGBTQAI2S+ family, who have long been at the forefront of the Green movement for equality. Comment, you can say all the letters you want to now, but you know what I would respect a lot more? I fucked up. 'Cause you fucked up, Butch, you fucked up really bad. But instead of just owning that, it's all this, I'm saddened because I'm being portrayed as blah, blah, blah. We don't care if you're saddened. We don't care. We do care about the movement that is going on and how you, as a candidate who doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, is actively harming it. Continuing, the remarks in question, presented in a hostile interview. Okay, did you know it was hostile when you were going into it? Why did you do the interview? Did you have a strategy? Did you practice? Whatever the case, you fucking failed. Bad. Continuing, were misrepresented through selective editing to suggest otherwise. In context, I was engaging in this really gets good. I was engaging in what I thought was a discussion of a nuanced policy on Olympic inclusion. Really, you're running for vice president and you thought that they just wanted to have a good faith, nuanced discussion about the Olympics? You get the sucker prize of the year. Continuing, based on information shared by the IOC, not making a statement against trans inclusion. Again, utterly unprepared, totally unready in every way for national politics. I'm reminded actually of that Tea Party politician back in the day from, I think, Delaware, where she did the whole ad about I am not a witch or something like that, trying to rebuke claims that she's into witchcraft or something. You're done. You're cooked. You're toast. You do not understand politics whatsoever in any way. The Green Party fouled up royally, putting this guy at the top of their ticket. I don't know what the process was, but whatever it is, needs review. Continuing, unfortunately, certain individuals have chosen to distort my words, almost like you're running for office, weaponizing them to undermine our movement and campaign. In my 11-week crash course into the world of electoral politics, I have learned that unethical people are paid good money to twist the words and sully the name of good people. Are you in 5th grade? They turn midnight into high noon with selective editing, cherry-picking sound bites to produce gotcha moments that never were. Yeah, you're already lost. I mean, everyone reading this is probably familiar with politics to a point where this is just a given. Anyway, the fear and desperation of Democrats to drive a wedge into the Green Party base. Well, again, there is a rift in the Green Party between the eco-socialist left and the contrarian populist libertarian right. That does exist. It's something that we've talked about quite a bit over the years on this channel, whether it's talking about Kim Ivermectinson, Jimmy Dore, or any of the other right populists trying to make a foray into the left and to sort of claim that as their own territory. Anyway, that has driven this process into overdrive. They've now been caught multiple times trying to utilize Black Talk Radio to further this agenda. Throughout my career, I've been a vocal advocate for queer rights, and I remain committed to the liberation of all marginalized communities. It is a priority for me to stand alongside trans and queer individuals in every fight for equality, including the urgent struggle against violence targeting queer and trans women of color. I know that the misperception caused by these comments has hurt members of the LGBTQ+ community, especially those who have felt misrepresented or unprotected. For that, I am truly sorry. Well, better late than never. I've already spoken with the officers of the National Lavender Greens Caucus and appreciate their willingness to engage in open, honest conversation on this matter. I am committed to continuing this dialogue beyond the immediate demands of this election season. Counterpoint, I'm not sure that anyone wants to hear from you even now, let alone beyond this election season, to ensure that our party's values and my own are as clear and unwavering as ever. No, you're done. It could be that the Green Party has become or is becoming something that is not in line with its own stated values and something very different from what I've seen from it in the past. Or this could just be a monumental screw-up at a pivotal time. Time will tell, but in the meantime, the US left still has to get organized. It still has to do something. And it still has to keep up the fight against the right-wing populist fascist pretenders that are going to try to sneak in there as part of the resistance. This goes back to Jill Steins speaking at the Rage Against the War Machine rally, which was held by the Libertarian Party. Forget the Libertarian Party, okay? They're fascists. And drop Jill Stein because she plays right into that. Like I said, I think she improved her messaging a little bit, but the Green Party could do a lot better. Now, we need people to volunteer to be the nominee, and then they have to actually get elected in the Green Party primary. And she got elected because there weren't a lot of other prominent leaders running. A lot of people thought that Cornel West was going to run this year, and instead he announced that he was running in the Movement for a People's Party, which is a fascist grifting joke of a non-party calling itself a party. It's a scam. It's a sham. It's not a party. You know, there's people who say that about the Green Party. The Green Party actually has infrastructure in almost all the states. Sometimes it's more of a skeleton infrastructure, but it is a real party. It's been around for a while. It has run candidates. It's gotten candidates elected. The Movement for a People's Party, on the other hand, basically just ran fundraisers for 5 years. And then, you know, Cornel West was going to run as kind of a protest vote thing. And I think that we need to go beyond the level of left figures just being people who've written books, the academics, people like that. We need labor leaders. But to get labor leaders, you need a fucking labor movement. You know, and Sean Fain is out there saying that Kamala Harris is a, quote, warrior for the working class. I mean, that's not supportable. You can't reward that kind of opportunism. So, you know, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's this kind of paradox of like, we need some kind of catalyst to get things off the ground, but in order to get the catalyst, there has to be some kind of momentum to even get that going. 2020 was the last sort of visible signs of movement in the US left, and then people did roll over for Joe Biden. They went back to sleep, and it's really been pretty quiet ever since then. I don't know when people are going to get riled up again. Maybe they will in the very unfortunate event that Trump gets reelected, which I really do not want to see happen. But unfortunately, for a lot of people in the US, it's only when that happens that they even consider taking any kind of action at all, getting off the couch and getting engaged. And for you as a leftist listener, you cannot be fooled by that, because the people who will tolerate everything but a Republican, those are called Democrats. They're not part of the left. If a Democrat gets elected, they are perfectly content to just sit there, maybe complain a little bit, but that is all. Those are Democrats. To the extent that they have any good politics, they're all talk, and they will stand by while bad things happen. So anyway, this has been the 2024 edition of the Fool's Errand of weighing in on the US elections. And I'll come back to a comment that somebody left on the channel where they said, have you considered a clandestine revolutionary vanguard with ties to the masses? Well, why do you think we're running this channel? Why do you think we're reading Marx, Engels, Lenin, and Stalin day after day after day? Like, don't let me hold you back, man. In fact, quite the opposite. But as I was saying in the last video, if the masses aren't in play, if they're sitting on their couch and watching Friday night sitcoms, well, there's not a lot to work with, is there? So the idea is kind of to use more mass front organizations to get people involved in struggle with things that they're already conscious of and already willing to do some level of fight to obtain, and then to, you know, try to scout the people with some real prospects, with some real dedication, and to funnel them into higher study, make them into communists. If that's what they want to do, then help them do that, provide them with that education, the reading lists, etc. That's what we're trying to do here in a very accessible, very open public format. Hey, are you a communist or communist curious? Let's do some readings, let's have some discussions, and yes, you do have to do some public broad left outreach, like we're doing here on the occasion of the 2024 US general elections, to try to take the pulse and, you know, give something of a diagnosis. These are my honest thoughts as I see them. I do read the comments. I take the feedback. I'm trying to learn here along with a lot of the rest of you. And I'll say this. I believe that the US left can do better than it's currently doing. I think that we need and can build better mass organizations to bring in people who are only partially involved in struggle, and through that organized activity, deepen their engagement and activity and class consciousness. And I believe that we need and can build a better vanguard organization. Not CPUSA, not even PSL, which I've had a number of comments saying, well, yeah, they do the populism and the opportunism, but it's the best we can do. Yeah, that's not good enough. And I'll actually add here, despite discussing this directly in the last video, a couple of people said, why do you hold PSL to different standards than the Greens? Because the Greens aren't holding themselves out as a Marxist party. I mentioned the whole Howie Hawkins, the case for an independent left party, where he talks about turning the Greens into a dues-based mass membership party, and how he contrasted this with the PSL's mission, which is more of like a cadre building type of vanguard organization. And I think that a few years ago, I would have been more inclined to say, well, I guess it's the best we can do. But for me, particularly since February 2022 and the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, in tandem with the growth and hyping up of BRICS as a rival advanced monopoly capitalist group, which is openly targeting and challenging the existing established imperialist, or again in the Marxist-Leninist sense, advanced monopoly capitalist bloc of the US and NATO, and all of this in the context of a global economic slowdown, and in my opinion, a very likely 2008 type event on the horizon. In other words, basically all of the major ingredients that you need for a third world war, which could see hundreds of millions, if not more people die. Well, no, in that case, I think that the stakes are high enough that we really can't, this is not an abstract exercise. We can't settle for a supposed vanguard that is doing lesser evilism with regard to an inter-imperialist conflict. Anybody who has studied Lenin knows better than that, and if they're pushing a line which is contrary to that, it's because they have some other interest at play. Either way, it's wrong and is destructive for a revolutionary working class movement. So that is some of what has changed for me. I think that the stakes are so high in a situation like that it has to be gotten right. In my view, it's a litmus test for adhering to basic Marxist-Leninist principles in an absolutely critical situation. And in terms of a supposed vanguard, I won't support anything that deviates from that. Final closing thought, because I didn't address it anywhere else, for the people at a very low level of understanding and or just Democratic trolls hitting up the Green Party posts with things like, Jill Stein and the Greens just show up every 4 years, and why are they running a presidential candidate when they haven't been elected to other offices? First of all, they do get elected to some other offices, but as we've said, the entire U.S. electoral system is completely unfair in terms of not having the ranked choice voting or the proportional representation or anything else. It doesn't really give other parties an opportunity to build any presence. So really, it's a miracle when they do get elected anywhere. Beyond that, why do they run a presidential candidate every 4 years and then, fuck off back into the woodwork? Well, first of all, they don't. The Green Party is active in various places year-round, but also running a presidential candidate can be a stipulation in U.S. election law that is legally required for a party to maintain ballot status. That is, so that they don't have to go gather hundreds of thousands of signatures every time they want to run a candidate, but just to stay established as a party that can run candidates at any level, not just president, and just get them on the ballot without, again, having to collect signatures. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next video.